Andrew Gabriel, Vice President here at Langham Court Theatre. On behalf of the membership and the board, I would like to welcome you all to the Victoria Festival of Authors. To get us started, I'm going to introduce you to one of the board members from the festival, Brianna Bach.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brianna Bach. As Andrew said, I'm a board member on the Victoria Festival of Authors, and welcome to In Conversation with Jack Knox, with Ian and Will Ferguson. All right. To begin, the Victoria Festival of Authors and Langham Court Theatre are located on the traditional ancestral territories of the Algonquin people, also known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. We acknowledge the ancestors, hereditary leaders, and matriarchs, as well as the creators from these lands, and give thanks for the privilege of living and working here. We are committed to serving as learners and listeners. All right, thank you to our sponsors, the Canadian Council of the Arts, the CRD, City of Victoria, the Victoria Foundation, Langham Court Theatre, the Walrus, and Monroe's Books. All right, and thank you to Mo's Home Collection and Poppy's Floral Art for providing the background. All right. Yes. Okay, there will be a 15-minute intermission midway through this event. Concession will be open, but please note that no beverages are allowed in the theater. There are 2 gender-neutral bathrooms across the hall that way. Closed captioning is provided if you're watching us on the live stream and can be accessed through your phone or tablet. Like if you need it in live, you can get it. Please ask a volunteer for the Wi-Fi password and the URL link. At the end of the event, books will be available for purchase and signing. All right. And moving on to the real meat of the event, this panel is hosted by Jack Knox. Jack is the author of 4 books based on his popular column in the Victoria Times Colonist. Hard Knocks and Opportunity Knocks were long listed for the Leancock Medal for Humor, while On the Rocks profiled extraordinary Vancouver Islanders. His latest humor book, Fortune Knocks Once, was published last fall. So give him a hand.
Okay, I'll make myself comfortable here. Always take the comfy seat. Okay, thank you, Brianna. That was very nice. And thank all of you for coming out tonight. It's not the best day. This is what my mother-in-law used to refer to as son-in-law, where it was all right, but not quite what we were hoping for. So I'm going to start by telling you a story. Now, some of you might have heard this story before. Too bad. It's a stolen story. I can't remember where I stole it from, but I like it very much, so I'm going to tell it again. So one day, the Incredible Hulk, Bill Gates, and Ryan Gosling were all sitting around talking. The Hulk looks at the other 2 and he goes, "I got a problem. I think I'm the strongest man in the world, but how do you really know for sure?" Bill Gates goes, "Same deal for me. I think I'm the smartest man in the world, but there's no independent confirmation." Ryan Gosling says, "Yeah, I think I'm the hottest guy in the world. Look, I'm the Ken doll, right? I think I'm the hottest guy in the world, but how do you really know for sure?" So the Hulk goes, "Look, I've got an idea. We'll go home, do the mirror, mirror on the wall thing, come back tomorrow night and compare notes." So that's what they do. They come back the next night. The Hulk is beaming from ear to ear. He said, "Yeah," I said, "mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the strongest of them all?" And the mirror said, "It's you, Hulk." Bill Gates, he just looked happy too. He said, yeah, I said, "Mirror, mirror, who's the smartest?" And the mirror said, "It's you, Bill." But Ryan Gosling, he just looked glum. He looked at the other 2 and he said, "So who's Jack Knox?" Yeah, I'm Jack. I'll be moderating this tonight. As Brianna noted, yeah, I was a Times columnist for about 25 years, and those columns in the last few years formed the basis of 4 books, and a couple of which were long listed for the Leacock, which was kind of a big deal because the Leacock is the biggest humor writing prize in Canada. It's one of Canada's oldest literary awards, and it's been like Rick Mercer won it last year, Mordecai Richler got it, W.O. Mitchell, who else? Farley Mowat, Robertson Davies, Victoria's own Mark Learin Young. So yeah, if you get mentioned, it's pretty big. So I got long listed. I didn't win. I didn't get shortlisted. My latest book didn't get long listed at all this year. Not that I'm bitter. Meanwhile, these 2 idiots in the wings here, they've got so many Leacocks that they use them as water savers in their toilet tanks. I'd like to bring them out. Let me introduce Ian and Will Ferguson. Come on out. Okay, Ian lives here in, this is Ian. Ian lives here in Dysfunction by the Sea. Will flew in this morning from Eastern Canada, Calgary, where he lives. Both of them are best-selling authors in multiple genres, which is hard to wrap my head around. I'm a one-trick pony. Both have won the Leacock independently of one another. They also collaborated on one of Canada's most successful humor books, How to Be a Canadian, which was a satirical book which won the Libris Prize for nonfiction and sold like 98 million gazillion copies or something stupid like that. Not, again, that I'm bitter. And now they've collaborated once again on this book, I Only Read Murder, which is a comic mystery. Is that the right term? A cozy mystery, comic mystery. And it shot up the Canadian bestseller charts the day it was released. It's doing really well. It's actually the first installment of a series. I think you're on the working on the 3rd book already?
On the 3rd one now, yeah.
Yeah.
The 2nd one's coming out in the spring.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about that book eventually, but first I'd like to cover some other ground because frankly there is a lot to cover with these 2. They've led somewhat interesting lives with moderately interesting stories to tell. Happily, we've got a couple of hours to spend with them. So we'll spend the first hour talking about kind of how they got to this point, their lives, and talk about writing and humor a bit. And then once your butts are so numb you don't think you can stand it and you're dying for a smoke outside, we'll have an intermission, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about I Only Read Murder. And there go the notes. Okay, the evening's over. Actually, going to start by talking to Ian. Okay. Ian has had a long, productive career, not only as an author of 8 books, I believe, but as a writer and director in stage and film and television, both in Canada and the US. He lives here in Victoria, where he often works on arts and entertainment projects with his much more talented wife, Kirsten Van Ritsen, who is a comedian and actor and dancer and producer and director. And she will be, by the way, if you're looking for something to do over the holidays, check out the Chemainus Theatre and It's a Wonderful Life. She'll be there. She also once taught a stand-up comedy class to my niece, who is now a professional stand-up and did her first gig in London and England last week.
Ah, nice, nice.
There we go.
An unsolicited testimonial. Thank you, Jack.
A few years ago, Ian made a movie about Canadians in Hollywood, and I found irony there in that he's probably the most un-Hollywood guy I know. I once wrote a column in which I said he dressed less like a famous author than like the photocopier repairman. But I meant that as a compliment. He's unpretentious. They both are. And I think that has a lot to do with where they come from. The story of where Ian and Will were raised was remarkable in itself. They grew up in northern Alberta, like way up in northern Alberta, 800 kilometers north of Edmonton, almost at the Northwest Territories border, in a little town called Violated Livestock. It was Fort Vermilion, and they were in this, like, out in the woods in a no electricity, no plumbing cabin, where they're raised mostly by the mom, who did most of the heavy lifting. Yet out of that cabin came these two best-selling authors, a brother who's a career newspaper journalist, a sister who's a visual artist, and another brother who's the dean of music at McGill. And that story, and that story was told in Ian's memoir of sorts, Village of the Small Houses, which won the Leacock. And I'm actually going to turn it over to you now to talk about that, about where you came from, and kind of the thread that brought you to where you are now.
Oh, thanks, Jack. We also have a sister who she works in law enforcement, and another sister
She was deputized during the Fort McMurray fire.
Yes,
I see her directing people out of the fires.
I was watching TV and watching my baby sister direct people out of the Fort McMurray fire, and I was both equally proud and terrified. And she told me a good story. She's told you the story, but the guy came and said, I have to get my Harley Davidson out. And she was like, you can't go in. He goes, please, I'll just drive it out. And she got permission. And so she drove down with him. I know she escorted him down. She had to walk down. He got his bike and drove it out. And then she was walking back. And she turned her radio off for some reason. And her boss came whipping out in a pickup truck and skidded to a halt and said, get in. And a black bear had been following her for like 3 or 4 blocks, just thinking I might have a snack before I head out of town.
She's by far the coolest one in our family.
Oh, yeah,
our younger sister, she's the coolest Ferguson
so Darla
by miles.
and Lorna Joan, of course, and so it was interesting. I think we lost our mother a short time ago, and she was a tremendously funny. Well, that's not even fair, is it? She wasn't funny. She loved laughter. She loved laughing, and she loved things that made you laugh. And dinner around the table growing up was like a Friars Club roast. You know, it was just constant laughter and stuff. And I think part of it is that we were isolated. We didn't have television, right?
And we didn't know we were poor.
Yeah. Oh, we had no idea.
We had no idea how poor we were until we left.
No, I was astonished to look back and think, wow, that's when I wrote Village of the Small Houses, not about me, because I'm barely interested in my life, but about the town and the community and our mom and our family and sort of what that was like. And before I sent it off to get worked on by the professionals, I sent it to my mom to read. And she went through it, and she had little notes like, oh, it was actually Red Earth Road, dear, but they're on. I don't know. Oh, this is really lovely. You've really captured this. And she'd correct grammar. And then she had one chapter where she'd taken a ruler and just crossed it out with a red pencil. And at the end of the chapter, she wrote, you can write about this after I'm dead, sweetheart. Which is, a little passive-aggressive, because now I can't put it in the book, and if it ever gets published, then it seems like I'm gloating. But what it was astonishing to me, because I felt that particular chapter made her look like a hero. But it was about how poor we were, and she didn't want that story told, and I agreed with that. And so my point of that is, for those of you who've read Village of the Small Houses, if you think the character based on our father is more interesting than the character based on her mother, it's her own damn fault. Yeah, I think humor comes from being displaced, being out of sorts, not fitting in. Like, the status quo doesn't create humor. I'll give you an example. You're all from around these parts. You're used to the little flashing green light that means pedestrian-controlled intersection, right? It's a little flashing green light, and it's just flashing to let you know that at some point in time, a pedestrian could walk up and press the button and that light would turn red. So everywhere else I've driven, flashing green light means you can safely make a left turn. Imagine my surprise when I first came here. So if you grew up with that, you're not going to find any humor in that. But so that's, I think, coming from. Didn't it feel like when we left Fort Vermilion and came to Canada, we'd moved to a foreign country, right?
Yeah, we emigrated to Canada.
We emigrated to Canada, yeah.
Okay, that's actually, they say satire is a Canadian form of humor. Like, Leacock was the master of satire, the guy who, right? But it's an outsider's kind of humor. And that's why they say Canadians are great at it. It's no coincidence that the guy who started Saturday Night Live was Lorne Michaels, who was a Canadian.
Yeah.
You look at the satirists in Canada today, who are they? Rick Mercer and the crew from This Hour Is 22 Minutes. They all came from Newfoundland, out in the cheap seats, looking in. But same with you guys, was you were able to, you're out there outside of the mainstream, looking at the mainstream, not seeing absurdities that others wouldn't necessarily see.
I think that's part of it, yeah. Will, you want to weigh in on that?
I agree. I agree. It's very thoughtful. It's very thoughtful. It makes us sound much more deep than we are. Really, we're just trying to be funny. But yes,
Yeah,
let's
just trying to get some. We're just trying to get some laughs, really.
But you're right. Satire comes out of being very familiar with a culture that you're not part of, like seeing it exactly what you're exactly right, Jack. That it comes out of that that sense of knowing something inside and out, but not being part of it, not being directly part of it.
Okay. You didn't set out to be an author.
No,
You left home at 15?
I left home at 15, yeah. I moved to the great big city, the bright lights, the shining streets, the metropolis of Edmonton. This would be in the 70s, just if you're trying to do the math. And I dropped out of high school. I got about halfway through grade 10 and dropped out of high school and explored the rewarding and challenging field of manual labor for many years. And then I went back to college to...
Okay, but hold on. I got to get this in here.
What?
What did you do with your paycheck when you were 15?
Oh, I sent money to our mom. That's what we all did. When we,
And didn't you guys like basically pay for indoor plumbing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All that money went in. Just the whole thing.
I was more mature. I left at 17. I wasn't. I left it, and I had much like Ian. I had this image that I would just throw. I dropped out of high school. I did finish high school, but I dropped out of high school, and after grade 11, and I had this image. I would just throw a backpack over my shoulder, and there'd be a slow dissolve, and I'd be in Paris walking down the. I got as far as Dauphin, Manitoba. And I worked in the challenging field of pizza preparation. And
Dauphin, Manitoba is the Paris of the prairies, though.
it is, yeah, absolutely.
If you've ever been there. Oh. No, well, yeah, we all, when you start telling people you left home that young, it's like, well, then you get along with your folks, and it's like, we loved our mom, we just couldn't wait to get out of Fort Vermilion, right? It was like this idea that you could go out to the edge of town and throw yourself off and not have to live in Fort Vermilion. This is being streamed, so right now there's a Lafferty or a Flett just getting really angry with us.
Well, I know in one of my novels, Spanish Fly, there's a young guy in the Depression, and two conmen come into town, and the conmen recognize how brilliant this kid is. He's 19, and he's a natural criminal. And he says to the kid, "Haven't you realized yet that you can leave?" And that's kind of the epiphany that Ian had it sooner than I. At 15, at 17, I went, wait a minute, I can leave. I can just leave.
Okay. But you didn't set out to be a writer.
No, I didn't set out to be a writer. I ended up stumbling into acting by accident. I wanted to be a theater technician because I realized you could build sets. You could build things that didn't have to last longer than 3 weeks, right? Nothing had to. It wasn't like construction. Construction's hard. Building a set. If you guys went backstage right now, you'd be amazed this thing's standing, right? And then I stumbled into acting. What happened was Montreal College, where I could go as a non-matriculated adult student, meaning I hadn't graduated high school, but I was over 19 and I could pass a basic English equivalency test, which there was two streams to it. There was a technical side where you learned how to build sets and do lights and sound. And for the guys in the booth, this is for you. Sound and lights and stuff. Sound was done by taking big, thick half-inch tapes and splicing them with a razor blade and taping them together, just in case, I know it seems like a magical thing. And you could either take a course, you could either sign up for an acting class, which just sounded like nonsense to me, or you could, and here was the loophole, you could prepare an audition for one of the plays that the acting program were doing, because the acting program was also encouraged to understand us techies, and they had to either take a course called This is a Hammer, This is a Screw Gun, or they could volunteer to crew a show that they weren't acting. And you see, so I, of course, prepared an audition and then got cast, which wasn't, I wasn't looking forward to that at all. And And this just kept happening over and over again. Meanwhile, I was designing sets. I designed a set for the Rainmaker. I figured out how to make it rain on stage, and it was just exciting. And I put together a big package of all my designs, and I sent them off to like Yale. Not jail if you're Norwegian. Yale, it's a school. I don't need your pity. And none of the design schools wanted me, but I was forced to audition to a couple of acting schools, or my teachers wouldn't write me a letter of recommendation, so they wanted me. So I ended up going to a very good conservatory acting program. And my first day in school, I was wearing a black leotard because we did ballet every morning. Just let that sink in for a second. I want you to enjoy that image. Wake up screaming at 3 in the morning. And our dance teacher was Wally Siebert. He was from Georgia, and he danced on Broadway. And he taught us jazz and ballet and tap. And he had a cup of suspiciously cool coffee that may have had scotch in it. And he used to smoke in class. And my very first encounter with the world of learning how to be a proper actor was Wally Siebert coming up and going, "What's your name, son?" And I said, "It's Ian Ferguson, Mr. Siebert." He goes, "Well, Mr. Ferguson, let me tell y'all something. If you don't straighten that leg, I'm going to cut it off." That's when I thought I'd made a horrible, horrible mistake with my choice in it. But no, I wanted to be an actor. I started writing because I was on tour in Saskatchewan for a year.
But you know, that's 10 years out of purgatory.
Yeah, that's just, I know.
When they tally it
It's
up.
actually, if you look at Dante's Circle, there's just this one thing where it says, you tour with a theater company to high schools and junior highs. I remember there was not a town in Saskatchewan I haven't had a meal in, slept in, or performed in, because sometimes you'd have to wake up in town A, drive to town B, where there'd be this big school that all the kids were bussed into, and then go to a different town to sleep. But no, it wasn't a lot to do in Torquay, Saskatchewan after you finished a show. So I got some yellow legal pads, and I wrote a play in longhand. And I had a very good friend of mine. He's a marvelous stage actor. I'm going to drop his name. His name's Jeff Haslam, probably I think he's one of Canada's great stage actors. He's based out of Edmonton. And we'd gone through acting school together. And he had keys to my apartment because him and his partner were always fighting, you know. So many of the time I'd open my bedroom door and he'd be sleeping on my couch. He'd be like, "It's over." And I'm like, "Let's go for pancakes." And he read this play I wrote, and he was like, "Oh my God, this is great. Stephen Heatley at Theatre Network should produce it." And I was like, And so, and he kept trying to get me to do something with it. And what happened was one day the phone rang, and those of you who know Stephen Heatley, I'm dropping names that nobody knows. These are so obscure. This is a perfect Stephen Heatley. He was like, "Hi, Ian, it's Stephen Heatley. We'd really like to do Elephant Shoes next season, but we'd kind of like a typewritten copy." And I was like, so he had taken the script and taken it out, so the only copy, and taken it to Stephen Heatley, and they produced it, and that's how I started writing plays. And all of a sudden, my acting career dried up because as an actor, I had all the range of a Crossman BB gun, you know?
Can I tell them your best role?
Sure.
And it was good. It was good. And just take a look, my brother. He played Mussolini. and he was good, man. He was good.
I had my head shaved right down. Before guys did that, I had my head straight razor twice a week for that show. And back in the day, if you had a shaved head, you were probably a bad person. And so I used to wear a toque all the time. And I got on a bus one time, and I took the toque off because my head was sweaty. And this little kid goes, "Oh boy, that guy is definitely sure bald." And the mother was like, "No, he's a member of some Aryan nation." But yeah, Mussolini. I can recreate most of my performance.
Please don't. No. No, you have to cross the arms. You have to cross.
Yeah. Hold this for a second.
And this is my brother is Mussolini. Not bad. What do you think?
I'd say you'd have to imagine the lack of hair, but no imagination required.
Okay, and Will took a much more traditional path to becoming an author. He moved to South America, then spent several years in Asia, hitchhiked the length of Japan, married a Japanese woman, and then went to Prince Edward Island to become an Anne of Green Gables tour guide.
Yeah, same old story. I know. You've heard it 100 times. Well, that story again. It's a very typical career path, yes. I went to film school. When I was in South America, we were in Ecuador, and we were on this bus. We take this bus into Guayaquil, and the bus would always go up this mountain. It would break down every time, right in front of the shop, and the driver's sister owned the shop. And until we bought enough drinks, the bus wouldn't go. And we were sitting out there one time, waiting. It was just this beautiful, like, rolling mountains into the distance, and this van pulled up, and this team of filmmakers poured out. It was a National Geographic team, and they were doing some kind of feature on Vilcabamba. And there was this one guy, this is the 80s, and he had a big giant wooden tripod on his shoulder, and he had feathered hair, like down the middle, like the wings of a majestic bird, and he squinted into the horizon, and I thought, I want to be a filmmaker. And that was literally, and I realized I went to film school, and what I learned is I really didn't like making film. I just wanted to carry a tripod and then look into the horizon, kind of with sun. That's all I wanted to do. And there's not a lot of jobs for carrying tripods and staring. I did have the feathered hair, though. My hair was very feathered. So after that, I was so in debt, I went to teach in Japan, and that's from Japan. I came back. I got married in Japan, and we went back to Prince Edward Island. And my wife was very employable. She got a job right away, and I worked at a tour company selling Anne of Green Gables tours to Japanese tourists, which I always said was hard. It was I had lots of free time. It was like selling water to someone whose hair is on fire. You know, it was a very high demand job at that time. And I thought I would write a newspaper column. And you'll appreciate this, Jack, because I'd heard about this thing called syndication. I didn't know what it meant, but you could make a lot of money if you were syndicated. I heard that Dave Barry was rich because he was syndicated. So this was my plan, as I thought I'll write a column about Japanese customs and culture for Prince Edward Islanders, because there's these two kind of solitudes in PI. They don't really understand each other. So I pitched this article, this column. So it was a regular newspaper column. I think it was 650 words a week. And I believe I was getting paid $45 a column. And that was my first time I was ever published. That was my first writing. It's called East Meets West. So I'd write articles about Japan for a PI audience. And I was spending more and more time on these columns, like hours and hours and hours on these columns, and less on my job. And my wife pointed out that perhaps $45 was not adequate compensation for the amount of effort that I was doing. Basically, I wanted to be Jack Knox. I wanted my own column. So I went in, and the newspaper was called the Charlottetown Guardian, and the masthead motto, this is true, was, "It covers the island like the dew." That's the newspaper I was writing for. Not like all the truth that's fit to print, you know, speaking truth to power, was covers the island like the dew. And so my wife said, you're so underpaid. Like that's, you know. And I said, yeah, because I want to get more columns so I'd have enough to syndicate. You see, that's the lingo, Jack. That's the inside lingo. And so I went into, Gary McDougall was the editor-in-chief. So I went in to see him, and I said, Mr. McDougall, I believe that the value that I add to your newspaper is not reflected in the payments that I'm receiving for my column. And he looked at me, and he said something. Now, this is something you never want to hear as a writer or a human, just as a person. He looked at me, and he said, "We're paying you for those?" And I was like, yeah, 45. And he said, really? No, we're not. And he said, Denise, can you come in here? So Denise comes in. Are we paying him? Oh, yeah, $45. Oh, no. He said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to cancel your column. I was like, but. So here's what happened. I agreed to keep writing it for free. And then I went home to my wife, and she said, how did it go? Did you get a raise? I said, not quite, not exactly. And this guy's no help, this chump. I call him up, I'm all down. This is the kind of, and he goes, forget it, man. You march back in there. You keep your head high. You go back there and you do not leave until you convince them to let you pay them to write that article. I believe in you. But out of that came my first writing, and my first books came out of that kind of reverse culture shock and travel writing. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. And then the two of you got together and did How to Be a Canadian. Okay, I like this.
This is Margaret Atwood. The people think this Margaret Atwood. I was at I was at a bookstore. So I got hired to write. I'd done a book called Why I Hate Canadians, which was meant to be a funny title, like, you know, Why I Hate Bambi's Mother. Most people got the joke, not everybody, not our grandma. It's funny, I sent her the book and then she put it on her shelf like wrong way in, like it was smutty, like she put the spine in on her shelf. So Why I Hate Canadians, and I got hired to write a funny book about the Canadian Senate. So it turns out there were no funny stories about the Senate. It was just, all it was they took a bunch of money, didn't do anything. Took a bunch of money, didn't do anything. It was very repetitive. And so I was like, oh no. So I called the publisher. It was Scott McIntyre at Douglas and McIntyre in Vancouver. And I said, I don't think I can write this book. And he said, fine, just return the advance. Now, any writer, those advances are gone. Like the idea that you would still have an advance on you, yeah, here's the check. So I was bummed out, and I went to this book launch in Calgary, and Margaret Atwood was there. And I saw her, and she said, she's got that, that, I always think she has a kind of smoky film noir voice. She said, "You're the one who hates Canadians." And I'm like, oh no, it's a humorous book. And she said, you know what your next book should be? There's a book called How to Be an Englishman by a Hungarian writer named George Michaels. This is Margaret Atwood. She knows everything. And there really is a book. It's called How to Be an Alien by George Michaels. And it's a guidebook. She said, you should do a guidebook on being Canadian. I was like, wow. So I called up Scott McIntyre, and I said, hey, forget the Senate book. I want to write like a guidebook on how to be Canadian. And he's like, well, the contract, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, no, it's just, Margaret Atwood had said, and he said, what? And on the phone, you could hear his eyes go boing. He says, Margaret Atwood? I go, yeah, she's been hassling me. She's been bugging me. We were brainstorming ideas, and she's like, you got to write this book. And he said, what I remember is he said, do you think she would write an introduction? And I said, why not? Which is not a redundant question. Why not? The answer is because she doesn't want to, as we found out. So that became How to Be a Canadian, and we splashed her name everywhere. From an idea by Margaret Atwood, all the promos, and then I contacted Ian, Ian was working in theater at the time. He was running an improv and comedy club at that time, and I said, let's write this book together. That was the first project we did together, and it was touching because growing up as brothers and the wisdom that Ian gave me and over the years, and I thought, how can I exploit him? How can I, because this was his first book, so I thought, oh, there's got to be a way. So here's a handy tip, and Ian can vouch for me on this. If you ever work with a co-author, you want to divide the tasks by word count, not chapters. So Ian's like we're brainstorming, and he's like, okay, I'll do a book on curling and Canadian sports. And I'm like, good, you do that, man. I'm gonna write a chapter on how the Canadian government works. And he said, good. So he comes in and he has a big stack about curling and hockey. And my chapter, how the Canadian government works, 2 words, it doesn't. I threw it down. That was a long day, man. And he was like, you son of a, but we couldn't because of our mom. So anyway, so that was the first time that Ian and I worked together, and we'd always wanted, but I was writing travel books. So I was writing travel, Ian was working in theater and film. So the opportunity never really came up since then. And the publisher kept bugging us, like how to be more Canadian, how to be really super Canadian. Like they really wanted a sequel because the book was a kind of a surprise hit.
Okay, now.
I have to finish up in the Margaret Atwood story. So in the introduction to How to Be a Canadian, we poked what I felt was gentle fun at Ms. Atwood. Made a few little jokes. I wrote these. I'm owning it. So a couple years after How to Be a Canadian came out, I was working on a show called Buffalo Tracks, which was a talk show, and it was a very low-budget talk show. I believe we had 2 cameras. When we did audience reaction shots, all of the performers had left, and we would just turn the cameras and go, now remember when that guy said that funny thing? Ha, ha, ha. But one of our guests was Margaret Atwood. We got really good guests. And she came, she didn't arrive in a stretch limo, she came in she walked over. She lived in the annex, we were shooting her house, and I greeted her, I said, hi, Margaret Atwood, I'm Ian Ferguson, and she went, oh, one of the Ferguson brothers. And I was like, wow, is it too late to say I'm sorry? And she goes, that ship has sailed, and she whipped her scarf around and marched into the green room, and I was like, oh. Turned out she was pulling my leg. I walked into a green room to find her. She enjoyed the fact that I was ready to leave. And I asked her, was there anything anybody had never asked her in an interview? And she said nobody had ever asked her why she quit tap dancing. So we made that one of the questions. And the host actually tap danced with her. So she had a great sense of humor. And I'll leave off on dropping Margaret Atwood's name with this. I will just say this. Margaret Atwood writes dystopian novels like there's no tomorrow. They just, time to go. Even got a smattering of an applause break. It was very nice. For a book event, like that was cool. I don't know who applauded, but thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to ask you this question. Either one of you can answer this. What's the question at events like this that makes you guys, because I know the answer, that makes you crazy?
Well, the one that keeps coming up, right, Ian, is they keep asking, is there any sibling rivalry, which is a really weird question. Ian and I say, like, what kind of families are these people coming from? Like, do you guys, like, not get along, or is there a rivalry? I'm like, I don't understand why there would be. It's the one it's the only question that baffles us. That really baffles.
It'll come up time and time again. Now, when you're working together, when your brother's successful, do you ever resent that? I'm like, what the hell kind of childhood did you have, man? Like, who would resent, like,
Well, our family was us versus the world, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
So
there's Ferguson's versus the world.
Yeah.
When do we attack? That's what we used to say. It's us against the
or
world.
run for our lives. Or flee. No, that is the question, Jack, that we get most often when we work together, and it's a puzzling question to us. There's no sibling rivalry. Sibling revelry, sure. Boy, that just landed.
You didn't sell it. You didn't
No,
sell
I
it.
didn't
Watch
sell-
this, watch this,
you
watch
tried,
this.
You tried, okay.
Sibling rivalry, no. Maybe sibling revelry. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? See? You got to pander, man. You got to pander.
Oh, yeah. Let me get that pander bear out of the dressing room for you.
Okay, but the truth is, you are each other's biggest boosters.
Yeah.
Okay, to the extent. Okay, this is a story with a local hook. Remember Joe Easingwood on CFAX? Joe was an icon here, but even icons have off days sometimes. And there was a day that Will was due to be interviewed by Joe.
Okay, I love Joe, but I would be on his show, and near the end of it, sometimes he would, like, I know I loved him, but sometimes he was dialing it in. And I remember one time doing an interview, and Joe asked me, any funny stories about, and I was talking, and I swear I could hear him turning a newspaper, like as he was interviewing me, I swear to God. And I was like, oh man, so I had to do, and Joe, I said to Ian, Ian and I were on a road trip. We were driving through Southern Ontario, trying to find Uncle Tom's cabin. We were looking for Uncle Tom's cabin in Southern Ontario. And I was like, oh my God, what day is it? Oh, damn. So I'm supposed to do this interview with Joe Easingwood. And he has me on all the time, but I can't do this anymore, man. It's a phone in, it's like, and this is before cell phones. This is like 2003. So I said, we got to find a pay phone. Like, the clock was ticking down. And in Chatham, Ontario, they had a phone in a phone booth. And I said, I got this long number. And Ian said to me, well, I'll do the interview for you, man. We sound the same on the phone. I'll do it. You've done enough of these. I'm like, oh, would you? And anyone who knows Ian goes, oh my God, you didn't do it. And I'm like, sure, thanks, man. I thanked him. I said, thank you, Ian. And so he went into the payphone. He said, I'll be you. I'll do your interview. I said, oh, great, because I've done so many of these. I don't like phone interviews. And then the first clue is Ian gets in the door, and he puts his foot like this against the door. And I think that's weird. He's like wedged the door. I'm on the outside. I thought, that's odd. And then here's what I hear on the phone. Hey, Joe, it's Will Ferguson here. Yes. Well, this book, like everything I do in my life, is inspired by my brother, Ian. Ian's been a hero to me. He's an icon. He's a legend. Everything I do is due to my brother, Ian. Yes. No, I can't say enough good things about Ian Ferguson. That is true, Joe. My brother is another. It was the entire interview, if you'd listen to that, was Will Ferguson praising Ian for like 20 minutes. And I was like trying to get in the door. I was like, you son of, I was like getting the door, and he was like, shh, I'm on the phone. And I was like trying to wedge the door open. I couldn't get it open. I was like, you son of a, and the door opens and Ian comes in and goes, he wants you on next week too. And he walked away. But there's a coda to this. So we're walking towards the car, and Ian's chuckling, very pleased with himself. And I say, remember your Conan the Barbarian comic, issue number 1? He goes, yeah, the Barry Windsor Smith one. Would be worth like $1 million if our little sister hadn't cut that ad out for X-ray specs. We got in the car, and I said, yeah, that was me. And that's a mic drop. That was 30 years I was waiting to tell him that. And that was me, man. I cut that. And they didn't even work, the X-ray specs. They don't even work. They don't.
I'm just saying that comic book would have been worth a lot of money.
It's not. I Googled it. It's not. He thinks it'll be worth like $1 million, that Conan the Barbarian one. I Googled it. It's like $1,500 max.
Still.
But it turns out with a commercial ad cutout, $0.
Wow.
$0.
Yeah, and probably rolled up many times and shoved in a hip pocket.
Yeah.
It was very well read.
So yeah, that was my Joe Easingwood story. I love the guy, but so if anyone ever remembers a really weird interview I did, that was him.
I imagine Joe Easingwood going, "That was odd," when he hung up. Just that was an odd.
You
interview.
got touched. You said it was really touching. He said the love you have for your brother.
Yeah. Well, the other thing was, you had said you were a little tired of doing radio interviews with him, so I made sure I said, "Joe, anytime you want me onto your show, anytime. You're the best interviewer in Canada. Anytime you want me, I'll pick up the phone and call you."
So I did like 5 more Joe Easingwood interviews after that.
Okay, you got your own book promotion story.
Oh God, yeah. This is so. I'd never been a book writer. I'd written plays and sketch comedy and such. But thanks to my brother Will, we wrote How to Be a Canadian. I was a book writer, and after How to Be a Canadian, I believe you had priced yourself out of Douglas and McIntyre, possibly. So Scott
It makes me sound bad, but it,
No.
because
Scott McIntyre took me out for drinks on the Hyatt Regency in Toronto, up in the little patio, and wanted to know, how does it work that a family has 2 writers? Because often there's one artistic person in a family. And I explained, like Jack said in the intro, we got a brother. He was a composer at the time and everything. And so we came up with the idea of me writing a book called Village of the Small Houses, based on our childhood, because I was telling Scott some very well-honed stories about growing up in Fort Vermilion. So I wrote the book, and it was published, and it did quite well. But Will had taught me a whole bunch of stuff about being a book writer. Like, for instance, if you autograph your books, they put a sticker on them, and they put them face out with the cover, right? So more people will see it. Also, if you autograph your book, they can't return it for a refund. So this was good to know. So when Will and I did the How to Be a Canadian book tour, I had him there for support and advice and counsel. But I was on my own. And one of the things Will had told me was, when you're in town somewhere, go to the bookstores, introduce yourself, and sign stock. This is the term. You sign stock, all your books, right? And so I started off in Toronto. I went to the largest bookstore in Yonge and Eglinton, Chapters. Walked in, very nervous, because I didn't have Will there to assist, and I said, "Hi, my name is Ian Ferguson, and I was wondering if you had any copies of my book, and I'd like to sign stock." And the lady went, "Yes, we do, and yes, we would love it." I was like, "Oh, that was easy." And she goes, "Can I get you a cappuccino?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is, but sure." And would you like a biscotti? And I'm like, "Oh, again, you're saying words I don't understand, but sure." Turns out a biscotti is just a stale cookie, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. You have to. So I'm sitting there, and up. I see the lady talking. She's like, she's pointing, and the manager gets very excited and looks down. And I sit there thinking, wow, being a book writer is cool. And they brought me every book Ian Rankin had ever written. And I signed them all. And I never set foot in that bookstore again. That's a true story. I just imagine like Antiques Roadshow, like down the road 20 years from now, 30 years. "Why, yes, this is a first edition of Ian Rankin's novel. However, that's not actually his signature. These pop up from time to time. We have no idea why this signature looks so unlike Ian Rankin's signature, and why there appear to be tears of disappointment on the page." So.
I'm going to got one more book promotion story, sort of. The 3 of us were at the Sunshine Coast Festival of the Written Arts.
I'm going to step in for a second here. Jack Knox had the very, it was desirable 9 a.m. weekday slot. Yeah. 9 a.m. the weekday. Will and I came to see it. He packed the place and he killed. And I don't know if any of you have gotten a chance to pick up Jack's books. I know we all read them in a column, and he's like one of the fact that he could be this funny as a columnist on a deadline. Like, if I have to write 750 odd words, and they're usually very odd, about some subject for a magazine, it takes me a long time. But Jack killed at that, and his books are fantastic. and I believe they're available for sale. What I want is I wanted to make a lot of money off his books, but not enough that his wife Lucille gets that eye operation that would prevent her from looking at who she's actually married to. So,
Speaking of Lucille,
yes.
yeah, hi, hon.
Hi, Lucille.
We're
We're over here.
We're over here.
She can't see.
She can't
She
see.
can't see. We're over here.
If she had perfect vision, she would never. I mean,
Anyway, the three of us were sitting around, and Lucille, and we're having a cup of coffee, and Lucille brought up something about mansplaining, which of course inspired these two to jump in immediately and crawl over each other, explaining to her how mansplaining works.
So, yeah, the thing about mansplaining, okay, it's when a man. So here's the lady here. So if you don't know what mansplaining is, it's when a man like explains something to you
like what might happen.
slowly.
Like you might not understand it very
I don't
clearly,
think
but I'll go a little
Okay,
closer.
here's-
So what happens is, a
you're a
man,
woman,
usually a misogynist man,
right?
will explain something that you already know.
slower.
Maybe I should talk slower.
Shorter words.
Are you from Victoria?
Good for
we'll
you.
talk really slow then. All right. So that's man's.
So we
Okay.
explain that to Lucille.
So they go into the shtick, and then at one point you see Will go. You can see it in his eyes where he goes, "She gets I'm joking, right?" Which
I
harkens.
just met Lucille, in
Yeah,
fairness.
that's right. But it harkened to one of the best stories that has whipped around Canadian literary circles for years. And
This is the urban legend.
this is the urban legend. You know what I'm talking about? Yes. Okay, take it away.
No, it's, I want this on my gravestone, Jack. I want, here lies Will Ferguson. He did a bunch of stuff. But more importantly, he was the source of an urban legend in publishing and publicity. And this, I really do truly want that. So I had been, you get punchy when you're on book tour. So I had been touring, and they said we have a new publicist, and she's going to take out to Kitchener. There was a TV interview out in Kitchener. So we were in Toronto, and I'd been touring. I was getting kind of silly, and I got in the car, and she jumped in. And she said, "Hi, I'm your new publicist." And she said, "They told me I was going to have a lot of fun with you." And I thought, "Oh, what to do?" So I thought, okay, I'll just be the opposite of what she expects. So I just leaned my head against the window. I said, "Yeah, whatever." And it got really quiet, and she drove the car out of the city. I was thinking what to do. And she said, "Would you like a coffee on the way? It's a long drive." And I said, "Sure, yeah, okay." And so she drove through a Tim Hortons drive-through, and she said, "Did you want anything to eat?" And it's like the clouds. You ever have those moments, Jack, where the clouds part and the sun comes down, and you know? And I said, "Yes, I'd like a blueberry muffin, please." And she said, "Okay." So she gets me a blueberry muffin. We pull in park. She hands it to me. I look at it, and I say to her, and I should explain, the role of the publicist is to indulge the author, and the role of the author is to torment the publishers. That's in the job description. Publicists are paid liars. They just say, "That interview went well. No one noticed the nosebleed. It was great." So the publicists drive you around. They set stuff up. So so I looked at it, and I said to her, I handed it back to her. I said, "Can you please pick the blueberries out of the muffin?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I misheard. I'll get you a plain muffin." And I said, "No, I like blueberry muffins. I don't like blueberries. How is this hard to understand?" And her face, you could see all the conflicting emotions. She's, do I kill him here, or do I drive him out of town? Do I dump the body in a landfill? And then I said to her, "I'm only joking. I'm having a jape." And I knew she was cool with it because she said, and I quote, "Ha ha, very funny." So I knew we were good. So years go by, and this story, I didn't realize this. So years go by, and I thought this was a one-off. And I'm in Ottawa, and it's Max Braithwaite, if you know the author. It's his daughter is a publicist. And I said, "Cool." And I always ask publicists, "Do you have any nightmare stories about authors?" And she says, "No, it's been fun." And then her voice dropped. She said, "But I heard there was this one author that made a publicist pick blueberries out of his muffin." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, first of all, that was me. Secondly, it was a joke. And the story has passed around. Even now it turns up. And it's been elaborated. She was crying because she needed the job. Single mom. She was picking the blueberries out. The only thing I'm thankful is my name's not attached to it, thankfully. But if you've ever heard, and some people, often when I tell the story, people go, oh my God, someone told me that happened to a friend of a friend. But it was, so the Globe and Mail was doing a roundup of book tour stories. So I told the story. I said, I'm an urban legend. I'm the story about the blueberries. And it ran, and the next day there was a knock on the door, and it was a FedEx package from that publicist. And inside were a dozen blueberry muffins and a pair of tweezers. And a note that said, knock yourself out, Will. So that's my greatest claim to fame. Forget 419, forget all that. Giller, Schmiller, I'm an urban legend, Jack. I'm an urban legend.
That's pretty awesome. Do you guys want to talk about humor writing a bit? Just for a bit before we wind up.
I have a clip I'll bring out after in the second half. I don't have it on me, but yeah, we can talk about humor writing if you want.
Sure. Yeah. What would you like to know?
I have a newspaper clip I'll bring out after intermission that I've had for 20 years. This is a teaser so that they don't leave. They don't, sometimes after intermission.
Also, after intermission, when you go into the lobby to get beverages and buy books, Jack's book, my book, our book, one of us is going to slip a $20 bill under a seat, and you'll all have to come back and look under your seat. So that's humor, right? You set up an expectation.
So humor is when it's often something that's unexpected.
See, I notice you're laughing right now. That's a reaction to humor. When people say something that's funny,
reaction.
that's the correct reaction.
Good.
The incorrect reaction is I'm offended.
She's not going to come back.
No. She's not coming back. There's no way.
I'm going to look if you're still there when we come back. But yeah, I do have, that's a teaser to make people come back at intermission. I have a newspaper clipping from 20 years ago that I've had for 20 years from the National Post. It goes off of Stephen Leacock's definition of humor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to ask you, I'll do one more quick question, and I think we might as well wrap up because people would be squirming.
That's always good to hear from the moderator. We should wrap up soon because it seems the audience is squirming.
They seem to be drifting.
They're drifting
squirming
away.
with excitement, Jack. They're squirming.
They're sleeping with anticipation, Jack. They're snoring with excitement.
They're nodding off.
They're nodding
trills.
off.
You're still here. Oh, hey.
Anyway, sorry, Jack, please.
I
Yes.
was actually going to ask you once, because I remember you spoke about this before. It's toggling between humor writing and serious writing, and I found this with the column is people don't know what to expect sometimes. So you can understand when they're kind of knocked off kilter a bit, but that can include the publishers. Because you did a bunch of books, like you won 3 Leacocks, you done a bunch of...
My house is cluttered with Leacocks, Jack.
Yeah, I know.
They're everywhere.
But these great
You
travel
open
books...
a cupboard door and there's a leacock falling out.
You know what it's like, Jack.
A bunch of books are really funny beyond...
He doesn't know what it's like.
Yeah. You know, all these things, but publishers love this when they get somebody who's working and making money for them and is predictable. He's built a brand, so they came up to him and said, "Okay, you've done this. What do you want to do next?" And you said,
I want to write a funny book about Rwanda, about the Rwandan genocide. And they were like, "You're kidding, right?" And but I should I'll just leave that there. Let everyone go. Oh my God, Jack, you run into that because you were saying your column is a humor column, but sometimes the topic isn't humorous. It's a serious topic, and people say, "I don't know, Jack, that last one wasn't very funny," right? You get the same. So with this book about Rwanda, they honestly thought I was joking, and I wasn't. So I have a good friend who is a survivor of the Rwandan genocide, and not a survivor. He gets mad. He escaped the genocide. He escaped just weeks before, so he's not a survivor, and that's a really important distinction in the Rwandan community. He escaped. He wasn't there when it happened. He escaped. His family got wiped out. So we went back, and he's a very eccentric and very funny guy. So it's the story of the two of us on a road trip in Rwanda, and it touches on the tragedies, but I think all true friendship, endearing friendship has a humor running through it. I think there's very few good friends that don't have a shared humor, and Jean-Claude and I had a shared humor. So yeah, the look on their face though when I told them that, they were like, quit kidding around. What are you really going to write? No, it's going to be a funny book about going to Rwanda 20 years after the genocide.
it was a great book, it was one of those ones where I thought, man, where essentially the two sides just decided to move on. Like they could decide that this is going, this isn't humor at all, but basically they decided that they could either be enemies for generation upon generation upon generation, or they could just move ahead.
And the humor doesn't, I should clarify, the humor is not about the genocide. The genocide is absolutely tragic. The humor is about the contradictions in daily life. And I'll give you a quick story from our trip to Rwanda. So I have a son named, he's an author, Genki Ferguson. He wrote a novel called Satellite Love. You should get it. But he grew up as Alex Ferguson, so which is the name of a famous Scottish football player. So we were in Rwanda, we were out in Butare, way in the south, and Jean-Claude went to, I think he had to go to the bank or something. So I was wandering around, there's a little store, and I went in there, and they had a book of Rwandan history, of the kings of Rwanda in English. I thought, okay, I'll buy it. And I'm going to buy it, and in Rwanda, every time you write a receipt, they're like, all right. If you ask for a receipt, great. They got this big ledger book. What's your name? What's your middle name? Your country, your nationality, your passport, your favorite color. How many children do you have? It's your address. Like writing a receipt in Rwanda is like a long process. And he said, my name, and I said, Will Ferguson. He looked up because they love Premier Soccer. They love Premier Football in Rwanda. And he said, oh, like Alex Ferguson. And I said, no relation, but my son is named Alex. He says, son is Alex. Yeah, this son is Alex Ferguson. He said, oh. So I wandered around. When we came back to the car, there was a crowd of people there with papers and photographs, and they thought Alex Ferguson's son was they thought I was Alex Ferguson's son. And Jean-Claude grabbed me and he said, did you tell them you're Alex Ferguson's son? I'm like, no, I didn't. And we had to, I said, should I just sign it's like kind of like Ian Rankin. I said, should I just sign Ian Rankin? I said, should I sign? He goes, no, because they'll call the next village and the next village. And so I was famous in Rwanda for about 17 minutes.
There you go. And speaking of 17 minutes, that will be the duration of the intermission, which I think we should probably start now.
Excellent.
And then you'll come back and hear that.
Yes.
Yeah, the promised
Yes, 20-year-old newspaper clip. How is that for a hook?
Huh?
Come back and read a 20-year-old newspaper clip.
Thank you.
Hello. Thanks for that. The Claremont Review, I love that. Talk about people who are willing to be just so in process and just send you what they just wrote, and it's and it's a fiery, wonderful mess. I just loved that job, and I was sad that it folded too. The funding process became very, very, very difficult to manage as a volunteer, to be honest, and it's too bad. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't quite get what this panel was about, and this happens to me a lot. You know, new works like, oh, like a young up-and-comer. Nope, you're going to write about stuff you're just writing now, and yeah, that's a nerve-wracking thing. I was talking to Barbara Pellman about it a little bit, and I said it's like kind of like you're holed up in a hotel room, you know, and you're like stitching this new outfit, this new skin that's just you, and you know, you want to wait for the moment when you're going to appear, but you're asked to come out a little early, and people just see you like dressed in all kinds of whatnot, clouds and arrows and strangeness. So here we are tonight, reading from works in progress. So I think the only thing that's really like solidly nailed down for me is the table of contents. So I'm going to start there. Bright star, would I were steadfast, as thou art, not in lone splendor, hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless hermit, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing on the new, soft-fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft swell and fall, awake forever in a sweet unrest, still, still, to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death. So I imagine a few of you probably know my table of contents well, it being a fairly famous Keats poem. It's in fact the last sonnet he wrote before he died of tuberculosis, and he knew he was going to die, and he's writing this love poem scribbled into a book of sonnets by Shakespeare next to A Lover's Complaint, actually. And I've stayed true to the way he wrote it into that book. So what I've done is I've taken that sonnet and broken it up into 28 poems and decided to write right into that. It's very difficult to start trying to write a poem called Bright Star. Let me tell you, it took probably 6 months of just thinking about it and throwing things out, but it was such a place of refuge for me to build this little home out of someone else's poem. And with that great first line, the near paroxysm of it, the bright star, would I were steadfast, that subjunctive mood, as thou art, you know, as you are, but like that art and that thou, it's just such a, and steadfast with its little missing A, and I was like, okay, I can live in this for a while. And so I'm just going to read a few poems from it. The first being Bright Star. Here you are, after a long and lustrous journey from afar. The flicker of you dreaming near me. Okay, my little torch, it's time I got to work, hitching this constellation of illusions to you. Other thing with works in progress, it's not in a natty little book. It's in fact in this this falling apart journal. I also decided I would only write in this journal. The whole book would be composed in here, I wrote it out in pencil, and then if I wanted to change, I actually like erased and wrote over it, just over and over again until you couldn't bloody read a thing. It's just got this patina like a skating rink that's gone over and over and over again. Would I were steadfast. The way just pours with our old stories. The who did what to whom. They say, be outside your human smallness. But we too wheel in our fixed roots, in beloved darkness, with its chests full of arrows. The moving waters at their priest-like task. Nothing will ever be our anticipated debut. Still, don't we seem to keep rushing the dark stage? I suppose the orchestra is still warming up. It's partway through the tuning, and two oboes are underwater, politely handing a cup of heartbreak back and forth. No one's in the theater but us, my darling, to acknowledge this, the elemental ceremony. Upon the mountains and the moors. During intermission, we are meant to imagine the action carries on without us. Once, an act could only go on for the length of a candle. Then an interlude, in which all is reset, relit. We must re-enter so softly on our faux pas des deux. The scene has changed, but two figures continue their delicate revolutions. So it is a book of love poems. It takes place overnight, lying in bed next to a sleeping love. And so it is all apostrophe, you know. It's speaking to the lover, but the lover is asleep. So it's speaking to the self as well, and the night. It's soft swell and fall. Every night is a minor festival of making ourselves known. A slow landscape, our stolen home, where the hills are set about like pillows. The dog is a system of silence when he moves to my hand to ask if it's yet morning. The cat keeping warm between us, full of sparrow. First choruses from the willow, its lashes still loaded with nighttime mascara. I am in a good place. This thought tumbles from a higher blossom onto a similar blossom. A black dress slipped down. A star's proof in its wavering. We keep practicing the broken into of dawn. Trembling in ardent spring flowers on one mountain instead of two. I'll finish with this last poem. It's super in process, but I love it, so off we go. You know, I swear I'd be one of those people who would never say, like, I just wrote this poem. And I didn't. I wrote it, like, a long, long time ago, but here we are. You can imagine the sun maybe just starting to rise, and these two people together in bed maybe just waking, and the follow spot comes out on kind of the white stage of the sheets and follows two dancers across it, follows the loves, follows the myth. It's a winter dawn. We swan in the follow spot. A man with a bow pursues a wedge of swans to a lake of tears and finds refuge unfledged. Or he steals a swan's coat and marries her telluric nakedness. Or he's swan-drawn, driving a heavenly chariot, losing control of the time. Or he throws down his bow between the lines of his indecision and receives furious oration from the charioteer. There are no swans in that one, just divine self-revelation between best friends. In one, you play the young man cured of his love for another young man, and I play the other young man who, enraged, drowns. Will you sing and dive where I fell to you? The gods so like your sad songs, they transform you into a heavenly swan. In one, you play the black swan and you play the white swan, and I play the prince who chooses wrong. To break the spell, he must pledge his love. He breaks his weapon and does. In another, we both play Nijinsky and just keep lifting the form with our queerness. In every story, Eros jolts and we take hold, its ghostly hand. In apotheosis of love, we drown or ascend or die at each other's side. In our marital bed, a cloud of feathers gathers at our thighs. Our fingers, we open our mouths, and I swear I don't make these things up, clouds. And tipped in gold or lead, one arrow is pluming in. The gods so envy our love lives, they clothe ourselves in our skin. The divine self-revelation is about to begin, and we are but one myth dissolving into another, risking nihility. Thanks very much.
She's still there. I don't know if we're ready to go or not. We're waiting for the, they're live streaming this, which is a thing that's done on the internet. When we were, yeah.
You should be up here.
No, we're not explaining computer stuff. When we were working on this book, we were asked if we were, what is it they asked if we did?
Because Ian and I were just, we'd call each other up and crack each other up, and we'd send emails and letters. And they said, did you set up a shared Google Doc? And we're like, what? Like, the idea that we would even know what a shared Google Doc is, but our editor said, did you? We're like, no.
What is you have a Goodreads story, right? What did they ask you about? I'd never heard of Goodreads.
I didn't know there was, I didn't know about Goodreads.
I didn't know what this was.
The publisher, until 2 books ago, my publisher said, no, Will, we think it's time you should really, and this is what they said, update your Goodreads bio. And what I heard was mumbo jumbo rhubarb, and I was like, what? Update, they said, yeah, you need to update your Goodreads bio. I said, okay. He said, do you want us to do it? I said, okay, you do it, and then I'll tell you if you did it properly. And then I called my young son, and what's a Goodreads bio? And there's this website where people go and review books, and there's your bio there. But I did not know.
No, I had no idea.
So I'm kind of, we're both kind of out of it.
My favorite thing on Goodreads right now, because I hadn't heard of it until this book, the publicist for this book said you should, there's great reviews on Goodreads. And they are, I mean, but there'll also be like a review that says, I hated the main character. You go, that's weird. And then the next review, but I love this character so much. I'm like, okay, well, there you go. That's the range of.
It's very bipolar.
Yeah, very, yeah.
I think it's
or passive aggressive. I'm not sure which word we're using. But no, we don't. I don't know if we've started or not. Normally at this point, the floor director would come out and tell us. Are we on it? Are we on the air? No? Okay. Well, we'll just chat amongst ourselves. Now, Jack Knox's books are really, really funny. So,
once again, louder.
Now, actually, Ian introduced me. I was doing the Penguin Anthology of Canadian Humor, and Ian sent me a bunch of your clippings. That's how I first found out about Jack Knox. This was years and years ago, but they were brilliantly funny. So Ian said, you've got to include this guy from Victoria.
And then, like a lot of people who know Jack personally, which I'm very pleased to consider Jack a friend, but also people who just know him through his writings in the Times Colonist, a lot of people would say to Jack, you should put a book together. And when he finally did, I was thrilled that came out. And that was 4 books so far. I understand the next one is just going to be your paintings. Jack paints puppies with big eyes playing poker. They're fantastic. They're fantastic.
Are we really waiting to go on?
I have no idea. No, we're on the air. Flash a light or something. If you're rich, jangle your jewelry. We're near Oak Bay. Oh, thank you. Very nice. Okay. All right, we're on the air.
And that's who really killed Kennedy. Anyway, we're back. Play along.
Okay. All right. That was good that he flashed the lights like that.
I was going to say, okay, where does your humor come from? That's the question I always get. Where does humor come from? And I always say France, because I don't know.
They're so funny in France. Oh, we are going to mime is big here. This guy is in a box, but there's no box.
Life is
absurd. They're different.
Life is absurd.
Remember, guys, they came back for the 20-year-old.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
That's the only reason they came back is because I promised them a 20-year-old newspaper clipping that answers.
Who
Jack's
found the
question.
$20 bill, by the way? Excellent.
So no, Jack was talking about the definition of humor. We talk about this, and there's different types of humor. Of course, there's wordplay. There's scatological humor when you're little. The poop bum fart humor. But literary written humor, I think, and there's some of it is just silly. Some humor is just silly. My wife, when we fly back to Japan, we fly into Fukuoka Airport every time, and then we go down to Kumamoto. And you have like, I don't know what's the airport code for Victoria? What?
YYJ.
YYJ. So Calgary is YYC, Vancouver is YYV. So this is the airport code for Fukuoka, and every time they put it in my bag, it just makes me happy. And it just cheers me up. They're sticking all the stickers, and they don't do it begrudgingly. They're not angry. They go. So there's silly humor, but the definition Leacock came up with is, I think, stands. And he said, humor exists in a gap, in that strange incongruity between our aspirations and our achievements. between how we think the world is and how it really is. And this is a newspaper headline. It's my favorite headline ever. It's from the National Post, December 3rd, 2003. I've had this 20 years. It's by my desk. Here's the headline. It's the Dateline Saskatoon, but it could be any town. Mayor vows crime crackdown after wife's hubcap stolen. And I'll read you the article. It's very short. A thief stole a hubcap from the car of Mayor Don Atchison's wife while the couple attended a church function. Quote, "It proves to me we've just got to crack down on crime," the new mayor said. "It can happen to anyone. Doesn't matter who you are." The car was parked less than 2 meters from the church door. And to me, that's everything you need to know about humor. It's in the gap right there.
Okay.
Was that worth...
Okay, which is actually a nice little segue, unplanned actually, in this case, to this. Talking about your new book, I Only Read Murder. And the protagonist is Miranda Abbott. And she's got that gap. She is a formerly famous television star. She's a has-been who doesn't really appreciate that she is a has-been. And there's so much humor in that gap.
Yeah.
In what she in what she sees and the way she is seen. But it's a fun book.
Thank you.
And it's a mystery.
How many people have read the book by applause? Have read it? Okay.
So
No spoilers then.
So Ian, this was a COVID project that Ian and I did together to kind of entertain ourselves. Well, how to say about Miranda? See, there's too many spoilers. I may throw you. I was good about to say something. I realized I don't want to spoil it. But Ian reads a lot more mysteries than I do. So he reads. 419 was a crime novel, but it wasn't a mystery. It wasn't a puzzle mystery. It wasn't a cozy. And so I started reading a bunch of them when writing this, and that is one messed up genre. There's this antagonistic relationship between the writer and the reader, because the writer's just messing with the reader all the time, and he's going, "See that bloody footprint? You see it? Means nothing, you fools, nothing. You didn't notice the door? The door was open. Red herring. It was the light bulb all along." And I said to Ian, "Isn't this cruel?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "It seems cruel, like you're always misleading the reader intentionally." So it is a mystery and it is a comedy. And
yeah, it's the idea that our lead character, the lead of this series of books, and again, I'll just point out, we finished the second one. It comes out in a couple of months, and we're already working on the third. Her name is Miranda Abbott, and she once played Pastor Fran on a network TV show called Pastor Fran Investigates. And what she was a youth pastor who traveled from town to town and would stumble upon crimes and solve them. But she'd also solve them while doing karate chops and karate kicks and occasionally wearing a bikini. So it was a combination of...
It would be like Murder, She Wrote meets Charlie's Angels meets Littlest Hobo.
Yes, that's
how
exactly.
we pitched it.
That's the elevator pitch. In fact, her theme song may be suspiciously, although not cause for litigation, close to the Littlest Hobo theme, actually. So that's what we just the idea of that, somebody who still thinks they're famous. She ends up in the small town of Happy Rock. She ends up in a play at the Happy Rock Amalgamated and Consolidated Little Theater, which bears no resemblance to Langham Court Theater at all.
The town of Happy Rock, too, is no...
No, it doesn't. It's just
people sometimes think it's Victoria. They sometimes think that, don't they?
I don't know why they think that, because in the book, it's the Duchess Hotel.
It's completely different.
Completely different. And there's an inner harbor, but that's...
But lots of towns have inner harbors.
Yeah, I'm sure there's inner harbors in Saskatchewan. Possibly not. So yeah, so what we wanted to do was take her out of her element. She ends up in this small town. She ends up in a play. This will shock those of you who haven't read the book. There's a murder. She's a suspect, among other people, and she tries to solve the murder. And what I'm very proud of, I think we're both very proud of, is the book is funny. But we're also proud of the fact that it's a well-constructed mystery. We play fair. When the killer is revealed at the end, there's no, and so we put in good red herrings. It's a good plot, I think, but it's also funny. So you can read it as a humor book that's also a mystery, or a mystery that's funny. That's what we were intending.
Yeah, you were talking about Murder, She Wrote. I was thinking, I read the book, I thought this is like a cross between Murder, She Wrote and Schitt's Creek. And no, and Miranda Abbott reminded me, and I'm going, okay, who is this? It's like Catherine O'Hara's character in Schitt's Creek with like Farrah Fawcett or Jane Seymour.
Sure, sure.
But it was fun. But I'm sitting back going, okay, how did two guys write a book? Literally, like mechanically, how do you go about?
Well, we
doing that?
phoned a lot. My wife got mad. We would call and stay on hours on the phone laughing, and we'd send snippets back and forth, and we worked out a. You work out. I mean, this sounds very mechanical, but you work out 3 acts. Where you want them to end, where you want the murder. We work it out of the phone, then we send it back and forth, and we kind of assemble it.
We try to top each other all the time, and sometimes throw each other off a little bit, like.
Yeah, we'd throw clues. I'll figure that out. I remember one time, for those who've read it, the police chief in the town is investigating a broken window at the back of the opera house. I wrote this scene. I sent it to Ian. He said, "Cool, what does it mean?" I said, "No idea. Figure it out." So Ian's like, "Ah." So then he would send a red herring to me. And the funnest part for us was the cheesy 80s and 70s TV reference. Yeah. And what stuck out to me watching Charlie's Angels, they never went to like a parka festival. They never went to the Arctic. They always went like, you got to go undercover as cheerleaders. You got to go undercover in a bikini factory. They were always trying to get them in bikinis and miniskirts. And that's what Pastor Fran in the show. They're always like making her go undercover.
As a French maid in a French maid factory.
Yeah,
you know,
and so she used to be, but the tragedy, I think, of Miranda Abbott is she's a poignant character. She's a very lonely character, and she's a good actor. Yeah. She's squandered, she's wasted, and she's actually classically trained and a very talented actor, and she got put in this cheesy 80s that defined her. And so
yeah, the other thing is, if I could jump in.
No, go ahead.
Pastor Fran was originally Pastor Fred.
Yes, we originally when we had the idea originally, I liked the idea of it being a guy. Like I thought, like a Kevin Sorbo kind of actor, you know, who was Hercules, and you know, so I thought that he was Pastor Frank, and his wife ran a bookstore in Happy Rock, and we hadn't even really started outlining it when I called you up, and I just said, no, let's flip it, because I think it's more interesting as a female character. I think it's more poignant, and I think there's more range. I don't
know what it says, but a male actor who used to be famous and living in a little motel on with a hot plate and narcissistic is just kind of, you mock them, right? But an actress who used to be famous is living in a motel, cooking a hot plate. There's a poignancy to it, and it made the character much richer. So originally, for those who've read the book, Edgar, who runs the bookstore, that was actually the wife. We'd flipped it. Originally, it was the TV star was Pastor. And
Fred. Also, there's a point to be made. Not that it's a huge deal, but I think it's important to realize that in show business, male actors are allowed to age. Female actors, not so much. So, I mean, that's part of what's in the book too.
Okay, you've got all these characters.
Oh yeah.
You got Miranda Abbott, and Tanvir Singh, and Doc Meadows, Ned Buckley, the police chief, Graham Penteves, the high school drama teacher. Where do these characters come from?
We're at Langham. Well, characters.
Sorry, I'm sorry. So, okay, so about the characters, like they're, sure. Tanvir Singh, the handyman who builds the set during the play.
Tanvir Singh builds.
We
the
just
sets.
made this guy up.
Yeah,
he just kind of came out.
He came out of our imaginations.
It's totally created. So
he runs a hardware store called.
Yeah, and he has a tool belt, and he keeps
based on real
interrupting the
people.
rehearsals and stuff.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. They're not based on anybody real. They're just.
And yeah.
So anyway, the idea is that you couldn't come up with a character that in the middle of a rehearsal would start building the set for the next show. That would be
it would be distracting. It would be very distracting for the audience, because the audience probably wouldn't even be watching what's on stage.
Watching us. They'd be interested
captivated
in
by
what the fellow was doing,
which is not what we wanted.
No.
That's not the effect.
And again, remember, these characters just come out of pure imagination. You know, like there's nothing.
Okay, I think we can
don't know what the deal is.
But that was odd.
Well, that's done.
Yeah, thank God that's over with. Anyway, so, and then you have, like, for example, in the book, there's the character of Graham Penty, right? Yeah. Who is,
Okay, we'll try to work through this.
Okay,
so
I think he's done. Go ahead. Ask your next.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. Sorry, just pardon me. I'm just going to try and take care of this. Hold on.
Sorry, folks. This is.
I can only apologize.
I guess they're ready to set for the next one. That's an eerie silence.
Oh, most silences are eerie when you're on a stage.
Or awkward. It could be an awkward silence. Oh.
Oh no!
Oh my God!
Who would have seen that?
I didn't see that coming. It looks like beloved.
Excuse me, breathe through your genitals, children, breathe. As a high school drama teacher, I need to see you breathe. We are on a sacred space. A sacred space, children. Tina! Oh my God, he's dead! He's really dead! Oh.
I get a feeling he's dead, Ian.
I also have a feeling this might be Graham Penty, the high school drama teacher. So,
no.
It wasn't you. You're the one who
you.
went back. You were in the wings with him. I mean,
It's not the drama teacher.
Jack Knox
It's
is-
not the handyman.
I mean, who's going to replace Jack Knox at this point? Like, we don't even have an what? So obviously, what's happened is, if Doc Meadows was here, we'd have Doc Meadows take a look at the body.
Yeah,
right? Should I take a look at the body to ensure he's dead, or did Graham Penty's he's dead, he's really dead, do it for us?
I've trained at RADA. He's dead.
Okay. Well, then we won't need to look. So what we have now is we have a real tough situation here, ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen.
One, two
Obviously,
suspects.
beloved newspaper columnist, local bon vivant, and man about town has not only been murdered, and his poor wife Lucille has been widowed. We obviously aren't going to let anybody leave the theater. We saw this.
Yeah.
If only
Seal the exits. Seal the exits.
Yeah. If only there was a detective of some kind, professional or amateur, who could help us out. I mean, it just.
It is I, Miranda Abbott. Oh, thank you. My fans. Oh, my fans and audience. Oh, look, a camera. Hi. Oh, well, what's happening?
Well, we're both authors, and the
I
fellow.
don't read books. I just watch television.
Okay, odd, but you're here at a literary festival. We've just had a murder. Jack Knox was stabbed to death in the
Beloved
wings.
Jack
Well, actually, in the
Knox.
stomach. He wasn't stabbed in the
Oh
stomach.
dear, how tragic.
Perhaps if we all did some calming exercises.
I mean,
Breathe through the core.
Oh, I think there must be some guilty, but now I can see much better here, darling. Oh, look at all the guilty-looking people.
Yes.
I mean, I only solve murders on TV, but I'm sure I could do it in person. Oh, you look very guilty. Stand up. What's
Get
your
the house
name?
lights up a little bit here.
What's your name? Jason. Jason, where were you when Jack Knox was murdered?
Right here.
Well, that seems pretty obvious to me. We have a guilty party.
Yes.
Do you have an alibi, Jason?
Just that I was here.
I
Don't-
think he's incriminating himself.
Don't get comfortable and sit down, pal. You stay right where you are. We were all going to keep our eyes on you.
Shifty look with that.
He's got a shifty look on him.
Well, she's not the only one who could solve a crime. I see some shifty people also. Excuse me, madam, you, with that grinning face, that happy smile, could you please stand up?
Oh, good choice.
All right.
It's written all over her.
Yes, definitely is. So, what do you do, madam?
And kill people. Aha. Come to the theater and kill people. That's
Yes.
what Jason said.
Obviously. You obviously murder people as a thrill thing. Kind of. She said not so far, but still. All right.
The thrill or the murder, which is not
Which
true.
is the part, the thrill or the murder?
Which is it? Do you,
Well, I don't know. They both look pretty guilty.
They do.
Hey,
They
Tanver,
do. They do. I think we need a third one.
The color red. This lady. It's her.
The blood red.
Where were you when this happened?
You
I
can't
would-
possibly kill someone while wearing Barbie pink.
No, exactly.
Very good alibi.
Oh no! Don't sit back down. You're up.
So please. So we have Barbie Pink. We have guilty by coming to theater regularly just to kill people.
And Jason.
I prefer Ken.
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 I'm just Ken.
Aha. Well,
He's just Ken. That sounds like a false name that you would give to get out of a murder.
that's true. Well, there's one. How do we solve this?
I think the audience was all here and they would know which of these three could possibly have done. We should do it by applause.
By applause.
If you think it was
Let's have them turn and face the audience
Oh,
so they
their-
can see the guilty look
their
in their
guilty
eyes.
look on
Here
their
we go.
faces.
Give them the last round of applause they're ever going to get before they go to the Hooskow.
Oh, well, that seems lovely. But we're actually voting for who you think the killer is. So first of all, by applause, do you believe it was Barbie in pink? And
All right.
this lovely.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Suspect.
get your name. Wendy. Do we
Wendy.
believe it's Wendy the theater goer?
Wait for it.
Yes.
We still have Jason / Ken.
Slation that cat, yes.
Look at that face. Look at him trying to. And applause. Oh,
No, I
Clearly
believe they
innocent.
have chosen
they have chosen
Wendy.
Wendy.
Have you solved the murder?
Well, clearly it's Wendy.
It's clearly
Look
Wendy.
at the guilty look on her face.
Well, look at the Peter Pan fellow next to her.
She has killed our dear, dear Jack Knox. There shall be no more columns in the Times columnist. What will we do?
Well, we'll stop subscribing, obviously, but other than that.
Really?
So we've got Wendy is the audience has decided that Wendy is the guilty party. So
Yes.
at this point, I guess what I should do is maybe we should get a hold of Ned Buckley, the chief of police, have him come down her,
Yes.
clap her in handcuffs, drag her off to the Hooskow. Would that
Yes.
work?
Yes.
think so.
I think so.
Okay.
Ned is our only.
Well, he is the chief of police, and he's
Chief
really
of
the
police.
only police officer.
Yes.
And it's a meticulous investigation by Miranda. It's
Well, yeah,
flawless.
Miranda-
Thank you so
Flawless,
much.
absolutely
Oh.
flawless.
Big round of applause.
Who else would it be than the thrill killer Wendy?
Well, thank you very much. So it's Graham Penty
Yes, yes.
and
Wendy.
Tanver Singh of course, ladies and gentlemen, the star of Pastor Fan Investigates, Miranda Abbott. Thank you very much. Wow, that was great. We had a murder. I should actually go check on Jack if the black.
You're doing a
bodies-
hard time, Wendy. You're doing a
body's
hard
decompressing.
time. And the whole time, this gentleman beside you was nodding in agreement, Wendy. Just so you know, the entire time he was nodding the whole time.
I don't know. I just checked.
It was just a flesh wound.
Oh, well then Wendy, there's no need for us to send you to jail. But if you've read the book, folks, you'll understand that why this dessert is important. This is a box of jalabis. So this is for you. If you can pass that to Wendy, and that's your reward for being a good sport and being selected as the murderer. Thank you very much. And you guys are a great audience. This has been. How much time do we have, Jack?
About 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Jalebis.
Jalabis.
Jalabis.
Jalabis? Jelly beans?
Julie Bellies. Jilly Bally Bellies.
And you know that why?
Because I made them.
That is right. Tanver Singh actually made
Yes.
the jalabis you're making there. Thanks again. Well, that was fun. Always nice to have a murder. And you're fine now, Jack. You're sure you're
I'm fine.
Man,
So-
I was going to move on his column so
Those of
fast.
you who are lining up at Lucille's seat, like the guys in Audacious, he's fine. So that's not going to work.
The unhappiest person in the theater, right over there.
Well, that was great. Thank you very much. That was, of course, characters from the books, I Only Read Murder. Now, I would like to point out that Tanvir Singh was played by Jag Gordea, who's a terrific young actor. You could have seen his appearance in Lucky Hank or in Reginald the Vampire. He's also a writer, an author. He's working on his book right now. And you were asking us about characters earlier, and Graham Penty, the character you saw on stage, is his character is a fellow who went to a very, very good conservatory acting program and ends up teaching high school drama in Happy Rock. And he was played by Alan Penty, who went to a very good conservatory acting program and just recently retired teaching drama in Victoria. Now, the names are different, Alan Penty, Graham Penty, so there's no combination. We were talking to Alan earlier, and he was reading the book, and he was quite worried he was the murderer.
He might be, no spoilers.
No spoilers, he might be. And then, of course, Miranda Abbott was played by Kirsten Van Ritsen. So give him a round of applause.
Wait. Who is Kirsten Van Ritsen?
She played Miranda Abbott.
She played Miranda, no, but who, how,
Well,
how?
she's a.
You didn't give her a...
Well, she's an actress, and she's a playwright, and she's about to go off and do It's a Wonderful Life in Chemainus for like 2 months over.
But I heard her husband is kind of odd.
Her husband's very odd.
Yes.
She's actually super talented, and there's nothing I can say bad about her except she has dreadful taste in men. And we've been married long enough that I now have to refer to her as my child bride. Otherwise, she says she seems, I don't know. And and all three of those people, of course, are on the board of Broad Theatrics, which is the company that Kirsten Van Ritsen is the artistic producer of. So it was very, very nice of them to come out and help out. It was very nice of Ken and Wendy and Barbie to participate, and for all of you to join in.
And we have another Leacock winner in the audience.
Yes, we do.
Mark Laren Young. I just
Mark
spotted
Laren Young. Mark
That's
Laren Young.
he's the one
Stand
to
up.
Leacock as well.
Stand up on
Victoria's
your
own.
bad leg.
He was the fan. There you go, Mark. So this is the star.
So this is, somebody was asking about humor later, and earlier, I believe it was Jack. So I'm going to tell a story that Mark probably won't want me to tell, but I'm going to explain how humor works. So Mark had an issue with his leg. He's still dealing with it. You can see the cane. The cane's not just for affectation. And when he was in the hospital with this leg infection, a surgeon came in and said, do you know what necrotizing fasciitis is? Which Mark did. It's a disease which can rot your entire leg out. And the surgeon sort of prepped him for the idea of, if we're going to test for that first, and if that's what it is, we're whisking you into the OR to take your leg off, which is that's a bit of a thing to handle. And of course, it wasn't, and he's going to be fine, and it's been a chore, but it's been so here's the thing is, once I knew he was out of the woods, I brought him some Mexican food, and then I looked at his leg, which at the time looked like an eggplant that had gained sentience and was about to attack, and I said, oh, you remember the theme song to Maude? And Mark, what? And I went, necrotizing fasciitis, right on, Maud. Which at the time got a way bigger laugh than that deserved. Because it was humor. And that's, Will was talking, friends share humor, but I think also humor, the minute you can laugh at something painful, you take its power away. And I think that's just to get, I seem like Sammy Maudlin, just to get serious for a second. But I've always thought that was the magic of humor, was that if you can deal with an issue that's tragic or shocking or heartbreaking, and if you can find humor in it, then that issue no longer has any power over you because you've made it into a joke. So that's where I come from with humor.
So what do you mean, says that?
Yeah.
When something bad,
say, for example, you
like
went to a live show and you kept getting picked on by the people on the stage.
And you didn't feel good.
And you didn't feel good about it, so we would make that a joke, you see. And and that would take the pain of it away from you. Right,
great, okay, thanks.
All right. Do you think she got it? Let's try again.
So I think she got it.
She got it. She looks awfully clever.
One of my favorite news stories this year, this was really brief, and it was about a guy from England who his name was Keith, and he lost an eye in an accident, and his friends started calling him Kath.
Yeah.
And I thought, because he'd lost an eye. But it's that thing about taking the power away.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
really-
100%.
And it was like, I thought, man, I want friends like that.
Yeah.
I really do.
And that's the thing. There's an old saying: a friend will help you move. A good friend will help you move a body. And a best friend will read your first draft. So that's where I like people that, after we dump the body in a dumpster, I've also got this script I'd like you to take a look at.
How did you guys work that out? When you're, like, I'm still fascinated by the idea of two guys, until I think it was you at Sunshine Coast that Ellery Queen was actually...
Two cousins, yeah. Ellery
no
Queen's
idea.
not a real person. Ellery Queen has two cousins who run under a pseudonym. And we were originally going to put the book under a pseudonym, actually. Right?
We were going to call ourselves P.K. Pennington because it could be a woman. It sounds English, and by sheer coincidence, it puts us right beside Louise Penny on the bookshelf. So we were originally going to be by P.K. Pennington, but the publisher nixed that.
Yeah, they said you maybe put both your names on it because of how to be a Canadian, that people would think it was humorous and stuff. Yeah, no, I think it's, what are we doing on time, Jack? How much time do we have to fill? Let's see
Say
here.
we got another 3 hours. No.
How much money have we raised so far?
No, but how do you work that out? Like even the...
We gotta kill a couple minutes and then we're good.
No, but do you start the process of writing the book with just the premise and the plot leads where it leads, or do you
you just start
reverse
working.
engineer?
Well, Ian and I, for one, we did a road trip out to Regina, and you have lots of time to talk on a road trip to Regina. So Ian flew out to Calgary, and we often do a road trip and talk it out, and then scribble down notes and that. But credit to Ian. I called him and I said, let's do something fun. It's COVID, we can't do anything. He said, when Ian was working, you should probably tell better, but when he was working regional theaters, because Ian's worked everything from professional to amateur to
kids theater.
And you'd say the B-list celebrity like John Travolta's cousin would come and be the star of and Ian found them fascinating and funny because they often didn't realize that they weren't famous.
And playing the role of Hamlet, Harry Berghoff from MASH, literally, like Raider from MASH would be the star. So this is the idea of starting with that premise of somebody who doesn't know they're famous anymore and just trying to, but we outlined it. We had the plot.
And trying to solve murders using. So a lot of it, Jack, it's really. I say this to if there's any writers. It's probably a very niche.
This is
comment,
Victoria. This is Victoria. There's, I don't know how many people in the audience. 35% of them are writers. I'm telling you right now.
Okay, so
it's like going to Salt Spring Island. If you go to Salt Spring Island, there's so many retired rock stars. Any open mic looks like an induction ceremony in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Same thing in Victoria.
I've heard that in Salt Spring, if you just throw a hacky sack general, it comes back.
Yeah, well, 100%. Yeah, it's
comes
amazing.
Right back
It's
to you.
amazing.
But I think two things is to end on writing advice. I don't know if that's really a good place to end it, but a lot of what
Well,
people
it beats
call
ending on interpretive dance, which was our original idea, but
a lot of
corporal mime.
Well, a lot of what people call writer's block is just an over-fixation on process, thinking about writing instead of just writing, just letting it write, like thinking about writing. And Ian and I didn't really think about it; it just kind of morphed, and we kept trying to make each other laugh and top each other up. And I give you one of the weirdest things, and you'll find this too, Jack, is stuff that you find funny is not necessarily what the readers find funny. And what the readers find funny. So I'll give you an example. And Ian and I know this is not the reader's favorite bit, but in the book, there's another TV show. We keep referencing these fake 80s TV shows. And one we came up with, Ian said...
Well, we wanted a spin-off. We wanted Pastor Fran Investigates to be a spin-off of a pre-existing show. That happened a lot in the 80s. You know, a character would catch on fire and they'd get their own TV show.
Yes.
So we wanted a... We wanted the show...
Well, you said, what if Beretta's cockatoo helped him solve crimes? That's what you said. Beretta is a detective who had a cockatoo.
Yeah.
And right?
Yeah, and we came up with the show that she was spun off of was called Parrot, P.I. It's a cigar-smoking private detective whose parrot helped him solve crimes. This still makes me laugh because when you said this name, I laughed.
We said we need a name for the parrot, and I said, how about...
Go ahead.
And we were on the phone, and he said, well, the parrot's got to have a name. So I should explain, he's a cigar chomping detective. And it's really hard to write the show. The writers complain because they have to get scenarios where the bad guys repeat their plans and then enough for the parrot to repeat it to the private eye. And it's a gritty show. And Ian said, we need a name for the parrot. And I went, Buster Jones. And we laughed. I don't know why. We laughed for 20 minutes. Like the parrot's name is Buster Jones. It's the perfect name for a parrot in a 1980s.
We find that, I still find that wildly amusing.
That's our favorite joke in the book. It's not even...
I have combed through, what is the Goodreads? I've combed through Goodreads. Not a single person has mentioned that as being, and my favorite joke in the book is...
So if anyone here goes on, if we see that, we'll know it was this audience. If someone says, I really like Buster Jones, the parrot.
Also, it sounded vaguely like Barnaby Jones, didn't it? That was part of it. I don't know, it just made me laugh.
But Jack, you must find that, the stuff that, like, your favorite line. What's a line that you are really proud of?
Oh, Jack, you have to tell this story, because Jack's been doing the interviewing, and we had, of course, a fantastic murder mystery, which I loved, and then we looked at the clock and went, probably should have cued those actors a few minutes later. My fault, not theirs. They were great. So Jack has no, I've completely lost my train of thought. I was talking about Jack.
A story. I want to. Do you do requests, Jack?
Yeah.
You request stories. No, Lucille is a marathon runner, right?
Yes,
she's an amazing marathon runner, and you're very supportive. Yes?
Sure. When Lou runs marathons, I usually stand at the top of the steepest hill and say, "What's for supper?" Or "Can you go faster? I'm getting bored."
And
you actually say that, yeah? And the other runners are aghast.
The question I was going to ask is, you know, there's the famous headline, "Headless body found in topless bar."
Yeah.
You have, it's a true headline. It was like the New York Post. New York Post. Headless body found in topless bar. Jack Knox, before he was a columnist, when he was still writing headlines, came up with, I think, something equally as good. And you have to, that's the story I was trying to get you to tell.
Okay, I know what this one is. It's probably the pinnacle of my journalistic career. Okay, you had to know the Guess Who, you know, the band. And Burton Cummings had a house on the Saanich Peninsula. He was the lead singer of the band. And his house got broken into. They caught the kid who did it. He went to court, was convicted, but he wasn't sentenced to prison. He got probation. And he had to know the Guess Who, but my headline was, he got no time. I think,
we can't top that.
And I don't think we'll try, and I think on that happy note, we're
going to go sign books. Jack will be joining us, signing his books. Will and I will be signing our book together, and any individual books that Monrose has kindly brought over. I'd like to thank everybody who came out tonight. Thank you for coming and supporting the Writers' Fest. I would really like to thank once again Alan Penty, Jag Gordea, and Kirsten Van Ritsen. I don't know if they're coming out for a bow or if they're already eating the free food. I'd like to thank Jack for doing such a terrific job. And who else do we need to thank? Wendy, I guess.
I still think she did it. I think
Wendy did it, actually did. All right, thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.